Every time we look at a map, we see a battle of colors. Blue-white stars across the Atlantic, the blush of an ancient dragon on the shores of the Pacific. The planet is divided by an invisible line, and at every point along that line, one question echoes: who is really stronger? In this video, in 8 minutes, but breathlessly, we take a behind-the-scenes look at two giants, breaking down the numbers, the technology, and the strategic chess moves behind the scenes. More than a third of global military spending comes out of the coffers of these two countries, with Washington allocating around $877 billion a year and Beijing $292 billion. In other words, America spends almost 3 times as much as China, but China gets every yuan back in the form of long-term, systematic, and often unaffordable strategic influence. The numbers are big, but they are not the end in themselves. Efficiency, supply chain security, and the proportion of indigenous technology change the equation. With 1.3 million active soldiers, the US armed forces are the workshop of modern warfare doctrine, while the Chinese People's Liberation Army is the most manpower-intensive professional army in the world, with 2 million personnel. This difference is not limited to the raw number of military personnel. While the US's network of allies extends from NATO to Quad, China's Belt and Road Initiative positions ports, railways, and even digital infrastructures as strategic garrisons. In other words, both sides are not alone, but have multi-layered alliance maps behind them. Numbers aside, the defense budget per soldier is about $675,000 in the US and $146,000 in China. This means that the US soldier has access to more advanced equipment, training, and logistics networks. China, on the other hand, is trying to reduce this gap through economies of scale in mass production. Domestic uniforms, drones, armored vehicles, and even microchips. In short, every piece that looks small in dollars can turn into a giant multiplier in yuan. Before we continue with the video, if you like the data we have shared so far, click the like button below and leave your answer to the question: will the US or China come out ahead? The skies are still the US playground. More than 13,000 aircraft, with 5th-generation stealth fighters like the F-22 Raptor and the F-35 in inventory. China's J-20 Mighty Dragon is the countermove. They now number 3,300 aircraft, but the 5th-generation ratio is still limited. The critical point here is aerial refueling and a global network of bases. While the US has landed in 600 locations around the world, China is still struggling to establish a permanent network beyond the first island chain. In other words, where the runway is located is as decisive as engine power. China leads in the number of ships, with more than 370 warships. You look at the picture and you see a huge mass in blue uniform. But the waters change when America's 11 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers enter the scene. A Nimitz, or Ford-class ship, brings with it more than 60 aircraft, hundreds of missile launchers, and an electronic warfare capacity equivalent to the air force of a small country. China is testing its 3rd aircraft carrier, but is still at the beginning of the integration of the catapult system and the nuclear reactor. In space, more than 200 US military satellites monitor orbit non-stop, while China has globalized its Beidou positioning network and is keeping the Pentagon awake with hypersonic glide vehicle tests. On the cyber front, Beijing's AI-powered ocean of big data can map the logistics flow of the base in Guam in seconds, while the US X-37B spacecraft spends hundreds of days a year in orbit and returns without knowing what it is doing. This is the arena where physical boundaries end and the quantum encryption cracking showdown begins. The US has around 5,200 operational nuclear warheads, while China has around 500. While the difference may seem huge, modern strategy focuses on the concept of second strike capability rather than total mutual annihilation. China completes the triad with DF-41 intercontinental missiles on land, Jin-class ballistic missile submarines at sea, and the new H-20 bomber in the sky. The US is already practicing this concept, with Ohio-class submarines quietly cruising the bottom of the oceans and Minuteman III missiles ready under the Dakotas. Just as important as numbers is the security of the chain of command and control. One false alarm could change the entire planet forever. Mined islands in the South China Sea turn the Taiwan Strait into a narrow 180-kilometer chessboard. Beijing calls for peaceful reunification. Washington plays the strategic ambiguity card. If a PLA naval exercise moves a few miles closer, or an F-16 enters Taiwanese airspace without authorization, tensions could flare at the trigger's thinnest point. And remember, conflict would hit not only the region but also the factories that supply half of the global chip supply. Everyone from cell phones to cars would feel it. The roar of conventional tanks is being replaced by the buzz of autonomous drone swarms. China can synchronize hundreds of tiny drones with a single algorithm to move them over water, over land, and even through sewage tunnels. The US is responding with the ACE concept, Agile Combat Employment. That is, distributed, fast, regroupable mini-bases and AI-powered stealth fighters called loyal wingmen, flying alongside the human pilot. The battlefield is now so complex that we no longer understand how many realities and how many pixels it is divided into. Every soldier who looks like a dot on a statistical table is in reality the hearth of a home, the hero of a child. A 19-year-old Marine who grew up in Virginia in the US and a 20-year-old PLA soldier from rural Henan write the same letter. Mom, don't worry, I'm fine. As politicians strategize, these letters should not be overlooked. Because real power lies not only in iron and steel and silicon, but in the patience and prayers of the people who wait behind. Conflict that ends on the front lines does not end in the cities. In the US, an average of 17 veterans take their lives every day, traumatized by their service. In China, veterans returning to the countryside struggle to find work, their pensions succumbing to inflation in coastal cities. When the cannon silences, a silent but long struggle begins. Mental health, physiotherapy, social reintegration, family balance. While politicians applaud new Navy programs, in the dark corridors of treatment centers, another battle rages to heal invisible wounds, to measure prosperity not just in GDP, but in the smile on people's faces. At the moment, the picture favors the US in terms of technological depth, global network of bases and defense budget. But China is playing the long game with its demographic pool, its army of young engineers, and the logistical corridors it has gained with its Belt Road moves. By 2035, the balance of power may not be bipolar, but will evolve into a multi-centered structure. When the last grain falls into the bottom chamber of the hourglass, who do you think will be on top? The stars and stripes, or the red flag with 5 yellow stars? Let's meet in the comments, because this race is not just about weapons. It determines every step we take for the fate of the world. If you don't want to miss deep analysis like this, subscribe to the channel, turn on the bell, and leave the comparison you would like to see in the next video in the comments. Your support is our biggest motivation for new content.